Welcome back to the show. It's the Vicki McKenna Show. I have Dan Lennington, attorney with the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, on the program. And originally, I wanted to talk about the Department of Transportation, their race-based quotas, et cetera. And if we have time, Dan, I definitely want to get to that. But I want to ask you a question about this story that I've been talking about for a couple of days out of Middleton, Wisconsin. And now I've learned it's actually McFarland as well, and likely other schools, at least in Dane County, where students were forced to identify themselves as either Republicans, Democrats, or independents, use little color-coded squares of paper, blue, red, and purple, put their full name, then staple that piece of paper on a bulletin board for the entire school to see. Is there anything actionable here?
Yes, the school district and the teacher are violating the First Amendment. The First Amendment guarantees the freedom of speech. It also guarantees the right not to speak, and that's called compelled speech. And in this particular context, a student is required to identify their political affiliation, write their name on a piece of paper, and then post it publicly. Over the student's objection, and students are not required to divulge their political beliefs, and a teacher can't make them speak on this sort of topic. Of course, a teacher could have a classroom discussion and ask you to participate, but you can't be compelled to disclose your personal beliefs in this type of setting and this method. Also, there's a federal law called the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, which I think was signed by President Obama, actually. And it says public schools that get federal money cannot survey or evaluate your students concerning their political affiliations or beliefs. And if they do this, they can lose federal funding, and the schools certify that they're not going to do this. So parents who have kids that have been compelled to participate in this exercise can sue the district and can sue the teacher for doing this, and all sorts of relief is available, including damages for something like this.
Okay. So, initially I did not know that there is the Protection of People's Rights Amendment signed by President Obama, which is now policy, not an amendment per se, but policy, that this is actually a violation of federal law and the Constitution. It seemed like it was, but I wasn't, I'm not sure, what case law says on this. You can't compel kids to do this. So we're worried about the targeting, okay? That's one of the reasons why we're worried about this. It already has begun, where students looked at the names and wrote down the names of those kids so they could find them on social media. So, by the way, the teacher will take his hands off this and say, I wasn't the one that caused the harassment of that kid. That was, that had nothing to do with me, except that it is, in fact, very risky for those kids who want to identify in a left-wing environment that is replete with people who justify political violence. Of course, some of those kids are going to get hurt by this. So it's just sort of kind of shocking. It's not just one school. It's 3 teachers in one school. It's McFarland schools as well. And I'm hearing from grandparents that they believe their kids in other schools are experiencing this too. They're going to check in on that. Can they call you guys?
Yes, absolutely. We'd love to hear from parents. They can go to our website, will-law.org. There's a button. They can hit contact a lawyer. We would love to hear from them, and we can help them protect their rights. The statute, just to clarify, is called the Protection of Pupil Rights. It's referred to as the PPRA. So if anybody wants to Google the PPRA, they can Google that. But obviously there's also the First Amendment and the right for freedom of speech and the right against compelled speech. Now, of course, in some classroom situations, a teacher can have you participate and raise your hand and make discussions and have all sorts of things. But this idea that you're supposed to publicly declare your support for the Republican Party, put your name on a list, is a different in kind than sort of a normal classroom discussion in which a teacher might ask you to give your feelings or how you feel about certain things. But this sort of disclosure of your political affiliation, particularly in today's climate, is dangerous. And if the shoe was on the other foot, the left wouldn't like students being forced to declare all sorts of things about their sexuality or their religious beliefs or anything like this. So this is no different.
Yeah, that's a good point because we're talking the First Amendment here, so there's a whole bunch of things. What if a teacher said, "Okay, everybody, who's gay, who's straight, who's bi, write your name down and write three things on the back of your your color coded card that you like to do sexually." You couldn't do that.
Yeah,
You could not do
right.
that. Because no, you can't compel that kind of information from people, or who believes in the Immaculate Conception, who doesn't. Let's line people up and sort them, and then essentially imagine if they did that in a Catholic school. Oh, you don't? I'm sorry, we're going to put your name on a list for everybody to go and harass you. Nuts. It's nuts in this
Yep.
environment. So and now that I'm confirmed that this is both a violation of federal law and my gut that it was a violation of the First Amendment is confirmed, I hope these parents reach out to you at will-law.org. But here's the pupil amendment, the Protection of Pupil Amendment, PPRA. It's a federal law, and these Dane County schools just did it anyway. It's almost like no one cares unless there's a threat of a lawsuit.
Yeah, they don't care, and we will be interested in hearing from parents on this. The other categories in the PPRA kind of give other examples, like for example, income. Like, what if they said, how much money do your parents make? Write it on a piece of paper and staple it on the board. How offensive would that be? Your religious practices, affiliations, illegal or antisocial behavior. Do you guys smoke? Do you guys vape? Do you look at pornography? All those sorts of things. Have you ever taken medicine for psychiatric problems? What sort of medicine are you? Are you on antidepressants? Everybody who has been on antidepressants, write the name of the drug down and put your name on it and put it up on a board. No one would abide by that. And that's exactly the same category as political affiliations under the PPRA. So your instinct is right. And yes, people need to stand up and enforce their rights against these school districts. The school districts are becoming increasingly radical in response, I think, to the Trump administration, in response to conservative victories and policies. And these kids are going back to school, and parents need to realize they have resources at places like Will. We have written materials. We have all sorts of things to help parents understand what their rights are and what their kids' rights are. And parents and taxpayers need to be on alert, and school board members need to be on alert for this sort of behavior, because it's just going to get worse.
And we shouldn't have to rely on individual parents seeing a violation of federal law. The schools should not do this. And I keep hearing that we're going to take the money away from the schools. We're going to do this or that. That sounds like a lot of bluster coming from the Trump administration at this point. And I think that's probably because there aren't the bodies to do the investigations, because you can't just do it. You have to do an investigation. All right. So will-law.org. The parents who are listening to this radio program right now, reach out. This is a public interest law firm. So it's not you're writing a big check to a lawyer. You guys do this so that you can make sure other kids are protected. I have 2 minutes left, so I would like you to brag a little bit about Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty's excellent victory at the Department of Transportation against racial quotas.
Yes, when you go down the highway this summer or this fall and you see all those orange barrels and you see these construction projects, you should know that 10% to 30% of all that money being spent on those highways was being set aside for women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. That stops today. Because of our lawsuit, the Department of Transportation issued a new rule effective today saying that those quotas are gone, absolutely gone, and that people who are constructing roads now are going to be the best qualified road construction crews at the lowest price for the taxpayer. And that we're not taking into account anymore whether you're a woman or whether you're a minority. We're going to get our roads built in a safe and effective manner, and we have just ended 45 years of these racial quotas today, and we're very proud of that victory and our clients who stood up for liberty.
Outstanding. And I will just say this, it didn't make more minority-owned businesses possible. It didn't make more woman-owned businesses possible. What it made companies do was fudge employee information. I mean, that's really what it did. In the event that you did, have a company and that company was chosen solely because of those kinds of characteristics. Those companies were never grilled on whether or not they had the capacity or the talent to get the projects done. So this is all excellent. Again, Dan, I really want to send people to your website, will-law.org, particularly on these school issues. And even if you just have a question and you're not sure, there's always someone at Will. It might take them a day or two because, you guys are nonprofit. But I really encourage people to ask questions as well. And there's a contact us button on your website too. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
You are welcome. Thanks for having me.